Our next speaker, I'm going to introduce, is Kate Mansfield. Kate gives us a presentation about sustainable refurbishment. Kate's an architect and has been involved in the Stable Block project of the BRE, which demonstrates best practice in sustainable refurbishment. So, Kate, over to you.
So my name's Kate Mansfield. I work for PRP, which if you don't know, PRP is a company where it's predominantly architects, about 360 of us, plus offices over the UK and a few abroad as well. I trained as an architect and worked as an architect, but I now work with the specialist environmental team at PRP. So I get involved in developing sustainability strategies for the architects for their projects, so that they are less damaging to the environment and that they meet policy and that kind of thing. So within PRP, we won a couple of awards last year for sustainability. We won one for Sustainable In-House Design Team, and we also won No Energy Building of the Year award. So what I'm going to talk to you a bit about today is what our motivation is in terms of addressing the way that we work from a sustainability point of view and reducing our impact on the environment, the scale of the challenge with regard to the existing housing stock, what our role is within that challenge, or how we can contribute. And I've got a couple of case studies, one of which is this the BRE Stable Block project. And lastly, if we've got time, I'll talk a little bit about environmental management. What is the primary motivation for sustainably upgrading our building stock? When we talk about sustainability, we generally talk about the three facets. So we've got the environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, and social sustainability. And what we do generally is we focus more on the environmental sustainability aspects, but you can't look at that without it being affected by the other two. So we have climate change. We know that if we don't act on climate change now, it's going to be more expensive in the future. I dread to think the types of environments that we'll have to live in the future and how we're going to have to adapt the way that we live as a result of climate change if we do nothing. Then we've got affordable warmth. A lot of the properties that we're refurbishing are to bring them up to decent home standards. We want to be refurbishing buildings so that we can reduce the energy demand, so we're reducing the CO2 emissions, and also so that people who live there can afford to heat their homes. And of course, fuel supply. We have declining fossil fuels. Supply is becoming, we're having to rely on importing gas much more these days, and also we've seen the effects on the cost of energy prices. The next one I've got is jobs and improving the skills within our workforce to be able to cope with the changing ways that we construct dwellings and to make them adapt and cope with the future changes. And of course it's all of these things that are driving the whole agenda to reduce CO2 emissions and prepare for climate change. So we need to really start to develop our products and services which are both environmentally and socially acceptable, but meet customer expectations or exceed them, enhance your reputation, and also help you to remain competitive in the current climate. So the scale of the challenge is massive. We have about 22 million existing dwellings in the UK, and 86% of those will still be standing in 2050. The government target is to reduce CO2 emissions by 80% by 2050, which equates to adapting around 500,000 dwellings a year. So we've got a couple of other facts here. So the UK has the oldest housing stock in the developed world. About 50% of homes are over 50 years old. 20% of these are over 100 years old and have solid walls. So it's like, what's being done? I mean, there is actually quite a bit of action and people are starting to make some commitments, set targets, that type of thing. We've got the existing Homes Alliance here, which is a coalition of organisations which are really driving the agenda for sustainable refurbishment and upgrading the existing stock. The UK Green Building Council, which is a non-profit organisation which is driving the sustainable development agenda also, and they've recently produced this report on looking at some of the key points, the key things that we need to do with regards to refurbishment. There's a recent competition which has come out where there's £10 million funding available, for which 50 demonstration prototype dwellings will be fully funded, and they must be in partnership with a social housing provider. Because, there's obviously some money out there to put into these projects. The government have got a number of consultation documents out with funding available. This is a community-wide scheme. There's 100 schemes, or they're looking at targeting 100 schemes and developing all, helping to fund like a whole house approach, which means that all the measures that can be cost effectively provided within those dwellings or those communities will gain funding or can gain funding. And this is another one which is more dwelling specific, and this is aimed at just the heating and reducing CO2 emissions. Also, different regions there's better initiatives in some regions than other regions. This is the Welsh Assembly have started to set targets for assessing the energy efficiency of their housing stock. And also the West Midlands are also helping to drive the whole agenda. They've developed a scoping report identifying the potential for reducing emissions in existing stock. And as I understand, Birmingham has the highest kind of number of affordable housing in the country. That's you've got Forum for the Future, which is a charity, again, which is driving sustainability. And they tend to work with organisations to help find ways that you can make your businesses or your operations less damaging on the environment. I feel like I keep saying sustainability all the time. And they have set aside money, or they are raising money for smaller regions to be able to fund refurbishment projects or update projects. So what's our role within all of this? I mean, it's trying to decide what to talk to you guys about. It's quite difficult because I don't know how much you know and what you don't know and what you're doing within your individual organisations. But in terms of the way, or the key points in tackling projects, we want to be improving the building fabric, so we're reducing the energy demand through insulation, draft proofing and controlled ventilation, but there's issues within that as well. There's lots of potential to look at providing perhaps more insulation than we might do, and in reducing the unwanted heat losses through the building. But with that you also get the issues about making sure there's sufficient ventilation and you're not going to have problems with mould and that type of thing, condensation. Material improvements, you can start to think about what's the environmental impact of the materials that you're using, and are they durable? We want to be using materials that might have a higher impact on the environment, but over their whole life cycle have a lower impact because they don't need to be replaced. Also, can you use products which have recycled content in them, and also at the end of that material's lifespan, or the building element's lifespan, is it recyclable? Is there anything that you can use from that? And also environmental management, the way that we manage these processes and our activities can also have an impact on the environment. So now I've got a couple of case studies here for you. One of them is the BRE stable block that was mentioned earlier, and the other one's Brownfield Estate.